I remember the way my mother's eyes would glaze over whenever her past was brought up. She had a way of deflecting, changing the subject and plastering on a smile as if to say, "Everything is fine." But I knew better. I could see the pain etched into her face when she thought no one was looking, the way her hands would shake when she tried to talk about her childhood. And even though she claimed to forget all the bad things that had happened, I saw glimpses of them resurfacing in unexpected moments. Like when she suddenly insisted I go to therapy for my traumatic upbringing with an abusive father. It wasn't until I was out on my own, finally facing my demons, that she opened up about her own struggles. She confided in me, after nearly 5 decades of marriage, that she wanted a divorce because my father had been so cruel to her. But even as she spoke those words, I could see the fear in her eyes, the doubt and uncertainty of leaving behind the only life she had ever known. My mother may have tried to bury her past, but its scars were still there, deeply ingrained in her soul. And despite her best efforts to forget them, they continued to haunt her every day. As I sat down with my father's former colleagues and our former neighbours, their words echoed through my mind like a never-ending nightmare. They all spoke of my mother with pity and sorrow, revealing the painful truth of her existence, a woman trapped in an abusive marriage. My heart clenched as I heard how my father had controlled her every move, forcing her to cut ties with any potential friend. She was a solitary figure, abandoned by love and left to bear the burden alone. But amidst all the darkness, she clung onto glimmers of happiness, holding on tightly to whatever good memories she could salvage from the wreckage of her life. My mother, trapped in a toxic marriage, was also an abuser in her own right. Her rage and jealousy knew no bounds, even towards her own family. I still remember the terror of being 4 years old and watching her unleash her fury on my uncle's new wife, screaming and throwing things until we were forcibly kicked out of their home. But that was only the beginning. Over the years, she continued to lash out at any woman who threatened her role as number one in her brothers' and sons' lives. She was like a witch, consumed by bitterness and resentment towards those who she perceived as taking away what belonged to her. And when I got married, it was my turn to bear the brunt of her manipulations and emotional abuse, until I finally had enough and cut ties with her forever. My mother may have suffered, but she also inflicted suffering onto others, leaving behind a trail of broken relationships and shattered hearts. Years of self-sacrifice and obligation weighed heavily on my shoulders as I watched my brother revel in his carefree life. While he found love, started a family, and pursued his dreams without hindrance, I was shackled to the responsibility of caring for our aging parents. And yet, even as I envied his freedom, I couldn't help but feel a sense of anger towards my parents for criticizing him for not being there for them. How could they not see that he had his own family to put first? In 2010, my world was flipped upside down when I got married. Suddenly, I was the one living a fulfilling life, with love and pursuing my dreams without any obstacles. Meanwhile, my brother struggled to balance his demanding career and caring for our aging parents. Our parents constantly criticized me, especially my mother, for not prioritizing them over my own happiness. But my brother never showed anger towards them for their words. He made it clear that I was foolish for following in his footsteps and putting my family first for almost 2 decades. Time had flown since my father's passing in 2017, and not long after that, a text from my brother delivered the news of our mother's dementia diagnosis. Recent studies had linked spousal abuse to an increased risk of developing dementia, so I couldn't say I was surprised by this revelation. In another text message to my brother, I shared my lack of surprise but received no reply. Shortly after, another message came, informing me that our mother had been moved into a care facility. My brother's tone shifted as he urged me to make amends for any past wrongdoings before it was too late to repair my relationship with our mother. Replying with the same message as before, I reminded him that our mother had numerous chances over the last 15 years to reconcile with me, but she chose not to do so. I find comfort in knowing that I have done all I can and have a clear conscience regarding my actions towards our mother. There is nothing more I can do now. My brother's desperate attempts to persuade me to reconcile with our shattered family are not born out of a genuine desire for healing. No, it is fueled by a sickening thirst for our parents' approval. Back in 2010, when I cut all ties with our toxic parents, my brother made a show of calling me, feigning concern and falsely claiming to understand my reasons for leaving. But just 2 days later, he revealed his true motives, gathering intel on how to manipulate and guilt-trip me into admitting wrongdoing. I know that one day my mother will pass away. It's a difficult thought to bear, but I take comfort in knowing that I have a clear conscience. I have done everything in my power to repair our relationship, even though my efforts have not yet been successful. This is one of the reasons why I am creating these videos in a playlist, to share my side of the story with my nephews and other members of the Meary family. Growing up, I witnessed my father cut off all ties with his two brothers. Sadly, I never had the chance to get to know one of them, and it wasn't until later in life that I reconnected with the other before he passed away. I often wonder what caused the rift between them and my father, and wish I could have heard their side of the story when I was a child. Another reason for creating these videos is to inspire those who may be trapped in toxic relationships. There is always hope and a way out of the pain. Sometimes we must do what is right for ourselves and our own well-being, even if it means accepting that others may never change or do their part in repairing the relationship. Should this unforeseen circumstance come to pass, remember to shift your focus towards all of the positive aspects in your life and release any attachment to that particular relationship. As for myself, I have made a conscious decision to accept that my mother and brother may never fulfill their responsibilities. But I must make peace with letting go of those relationships. Just as Abram left his family behind, we too must journey into the unknown and create our own paths. My new surname, Kaplan, symbolizes a fresh start and a rebirth of self, similar to how Abram became Abraham. I'm grateful for this metamorphosis, as it signifies shedding old skin and growing into a stronger, more resilient version of myself. Like a mythical phoenix rising from the ashes, I embrace this change with open arms and an unyielding spirit. In return, I have been blessed with an incredible wife and a deeply fulfilling life. The abundance of goodness and blessings present in my life far outweigh any sense of loss from my severed bonds with my family members. And for my two nephews who may be listening, I urge you to remember that every story has two sides, your father's version and mine. Do not be blinded by loyalty or bias. Seek out the truth for yourselves and make your own judgments.